Three women have arrived in New Bedford during the past year, and they're all making their mark on the cultural scene in the South Coast. We have a new executive director at the Whaling Museum, a new director at the Art Museum, and a new executive director at the Rotch-Jones-Duff House and Garden Museum in New Bedford. Dawn Salerno is her name, and she's the director of the Rotch-Jones-Duff House. Dawn, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
We have been, well, we accept the Rotch-Jones-Duff House as a historic building, but really it's a little more than that. It's kind of a look back, if you will. We're going to get into some of that, but first of all, you've been on the job for about 6 months.
6 months, almost to the day.
How's it going?
It's going really well. Thank you. I hope my board agrees with that, but I want to say that the best part has really been the people that I've met in New Bedford and my colleagues, that they're kind of welcome me with open arms.
Tell us a little bit about your career. I know that you've spent a lot of time around museums, and you in fact were part of a Mystic for quite a period of time as well. But tell us about you, where you've come from, and how you landed here.
Sure. Well, and as soon as I say Mystic, I look for the reaction. If I'm in New Bedford, I look for the reaction from that person, because Mystic is known for having the Charles W. Morgan ship, and so I was at Mystic Museum of Art, which is a stone's throw from the Mystic Seaport, and I had been working in art museums for most of my career. So, the shift to history was a shift for me and an adaptation, but I'd also been kind of steeped in all that history at the Seaport, where I still have very close friends and a lot of respect, obviously, for the Morgan and how it came to Mystic, and I can tell you that there's a lot of respect down there for the stewardship that they've been given of that ship. So, so it's interesting, the connections I already had, and the town I worked in before that was New London, Connecticut, which actually also called themselves a whaling city. So when I got here, I thought, you know, that there's more than one, but obviously New Bedford was a lot bigger of a whaling port than New London ever was, or Mystic. So the connections were there, and I started kind of finding them more and more as I arrived here and read more about the history of Rotch-Jones-Duff House. You are also part of a, you know, when you're part of museums, you join museums associations, New England Museum Association. What is that, and how is that helping you today? So the New England Museum Association is an organization supporting museums, museum staff. We're about, I hope I'm quoting this correctly, we have about 2,000 members across New England states, the 6 New England states, and I am currently president of the board of that organization. So we exist to support people in their work primarily, and to kind of make museums a vibrant place in their communities. So this organization helps support each individual museum that is a part of NEMA.
What attracted you to this job? You know, you mentioned you were in kind of near the water in Mystic and in London, but I'm sure it was more than that brought you here. What attracted you to this job? Was it a chance to kind of steer the ship, be at the rudder, so to speak?
Oh yes, let's pull out all the metaphors. Yes, well, that is true, and I got this question from even my staff. So I was looking for a position in New England, and the RJD came up, and the first thing I did, of course, was to do some research. I went to their website, and if you go to our website, you'll see some fabulous photos of the grounds, and immediately it was attractive. You know, people can look at a gorgeous picture of roses and have an immediate attraction. So the beauty of the grounds and the house were apparent, and then as I started to learn more about the house and its significance, and really its stability over the years, that it has some great supporters in the community. Our board is a fantastic group of supporters as well. That this was a really solid organization to kind of take the helm of. So I'm happy to be there.
For those who may not know, give us a brief synopsis of what the RGDH and Garden Museum is. The main building there is a Greek Revival Mansion. It's on County Street, for those who don't know, 396 County. And it's really an example of historic New Bedford. Tell us a little bit about the Rotch-Jones-Duff house.
Sure. Well, there are three families that live there, apparent in the name, Rotch-Jones-Duff. The house only belonged to those three families and then was turned over to Whale, which is still in existence, the Waterfront Historic League. They took it over to kind of restore it, and then in a couple of years from there, the RJD incorporated and formed it as a museum and opened in 1981, I believe that was. So the families were really the significance of the house, Roach being probably the largest significance, but Jones as well. They were both in the whaling industry. And the house itself is the only remaining intact estate that belonged to whaling families. So the County Street is full of houses that belong to people important in the whaling industry, because if you had a fortune, you probably moved up to that area. But most of them have been converted to businesses, commercial businesses, private apartments, and you can't visit them. So we're lucky to have everything intact from three families, but still there for the public to visit.
And when you say everything intact, I mean everything in that house is, I don't know, you tell me, but it's pretty much like it was in the 1800s.
Well, actually, we do say that all three eras are represented because they are. So if you imagine yourself moving to a new house and people redo their kitchen cupboards, they redo their bathrooms, and the same is true of families then. So the Jones took over from the Roaches and redid many bedrooms on the second floor, and put down walls and added a bathroom. And then the Duff family came in, also changed bathrooms, converted the summer kitchen to a playroom. So it did evolve, but the fact that we do have some documentation of those changes, and that those traces are there, and everything was done by the families, means that we're still kind of intact in that respect. But we are cross-era representation, and the furnishings are also kind of cross-era. So we would love the Roach, Jones, and Duff families out there to maybe consider looking around their homes and seeing what they might have had from their relatives, because what we do not have as much of is furniture that belonged to the actual families. We have a Beatrice Duff bed, and some of her clothing. So those are the really exciting things for us, is the items that were in the house and belong to the families.
And what I found surprising, frankly, was to visit this wonderful house, to look back at old New Bedford, if you will. Even all three eras are represented in the house, and the gardens, which, if you visit the website, folks, you can see gardens that will knock your eyes out. Frankly, they're very well done, and $6 admission. Is that right? That's
correct for the house, and the gardens are free, and we welcome people to visit them anytime, 24/7.
Yeah, you have
we
tours.
do offer tours of the house. You can also self-guide in the house. Schools come to visit on 3 different curriculum-related programs. We actually have one starting up this fall that focuses on actually bees specifically. We call it our apiary program because we do have an apiary on the grounds. So the gardens are also historic. They reflect different eras, but the fact that these families actually grew things that they could eat on the grounds. It wasn't just for beauty's sake, that there were fruit trees, and even in the Roach days, many more things in a cutting garden, for example, that they could use in the kitchen.
This is Townsquare Sunday. Dawn Salerno is my guest. She's the executive director of the Rotch-Jones-Duff House and Garden Museum in New Bedford. Part of your job is to formulate a strategic plan for the property. Now, I know about strategic plans because in my time I've seen a lot of strategic plans end up collecting dust on a shelf. So what makes this different? What is in the future for Rotch-Jones-Duff House?
Sure. Well, I was lucky enough to step in at a point where there had been a massive kind of assessment, and I would call it maybe a treatment plan, conducted under Kate Corkum, the former director, and with assistance from the National Park, which we are part of the New Bedford Whaling National Park. So with some grant funds, and we were able to do this assessment, and it recommended some restoration, revitalization of the grounds specifically, and also the house. So under Kate's leadership, actually, some of that progress has been started, has been made, and then there are still some things left to do, like replantings and returning some of the gardens to how they were at a certain era, because then that's always the question in a historic site: what era are you returning to? So the recommendation was that we focus between the era of 1850 and 1880, I believe, to kind of the, some of the golden era, or 1834 really, when Roach built the house in 1880, which was the golden era of whaling.
Well, that would be a real eye-popping thing. That would be something I think that would get the votes of a lot of people in New Bedford, really. That's people want to see that stuff. And hopefully that can all happen.
And our plan is definitely not gathering any dust. It's on my desk right now.
Okay. And I'm glad to hear that, because there have been some plans, especially municipal plans, from master plans and things like that never seem to move too far from the shelf. So New Bedford's cultural community, you're part of that. It is big and it's growing, although I guess the mayor doesn't like you to say it's growing, it's already here. But the fact is, it is getting bigger, and more things are happening, and more organizations are coming up with ideas to make things happen. What do you think Rotch-Jones and you can add to that?
Well, we are part of the cultural community, and reaching out to my peers, they recognize that as well. We're part of the National Park, the New Bedford Whaling National Park. So our location alone makes us part of a cultural community. And also I'm collaborative in nature, so I think my leadership at RJD means that I'm not going to work in a silo. No one ever did at the RJD. The fact that we had school programs and collaborations and we're part of the National Park, this was never how we operated. We always operated with partnerships with other cultural partners in the community. So I think I always like the phrase, and it's a great one for seaside town, all boats rise with the tide. So we're not competitive, even if we are with our peers. We are actually working towards the same goals. We're all trying to reach those local audiences and the local community. We're all in need of resources to do what we need to do to reach our goals, and so we help each other out, I think. So I can contribute by helping others.
Let's talk about, and you talk a lot with these folks.
I do. I just had breakfast yesterday with Ashley from the Art Museum.
Yes.
And I was at the Zeitarian. Yes, yeah, she's great. And I was at the Zeitarian Theater the same day for their outreach effort, reaching out to the community and saying, how can we help you? And I thought that was an incredible gesture for them to make.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the fundraiser coming up on September 8th. Tell us about that.
Sure. So as many organizations do, we are not the only one, but we were one of the first in the area, I've been told, to have an annual fundraiser. We have our annual fundraiser this year in September. It had been a typically early summer party, and this is moved to a late summer party due to my arrival in March. So we have been working for 6 months very diligently, and we have titled our party this year as Moonlight and Roses. And I think my committee, if they could have planned for a full moon, they would have, just for the sake of the decor. So we know that it's actually a new moon on September 8th, but that's how thorough we were. We actually looked up the phases of the moon to see how that would add to the decor. We have some great jazz music being played by Django's Dropouts. So a local jazz band playing. We have a silent auction with, I think my last count was about 78 auction items to bid on. And food and drink, so you can't go wrong with that, or the beautiful roses, because this is all outside on September 8th.
And tickets still available?
Tickets still available.
How can you get tickets if you?
The best thing to do would be to go to our website, and right on the home page is a link to the event, so rjdmuseum.org.
All right, tell us about the website, because if I want to visit or someone wants to visit out there, tell us about where to go to get that information.
Sure. The website is really a all-encompassing place to go for that. It'll give you the visitation hours, which right now are 7 days a week. It'll give you our fees for visitation. The garden is always free to visit, and it lists our programs, our upcoming events, a lot of history about the house that I still haven't even integrated at all yet. There's a lot of great background on the house and the gardens and the families, so it's a good resource. rjdmuseum.org.
All right. Her name is Dawn Salerno, the new director of the Rotch-Jones-Duff House and Garden Museum on County Street, New Bedford. One of the newest members of New Bedford's cultural scene. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you,
Good
Jim.
luck.
Thank you very much. I'll need it.